Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. Today I've got some crazy Dogman encounters to share with you, one from a subscriber. Before we get into these encounters, though, a couple links I'd like to share. The first link I'd like to share with you is Tromex's lead delivery system, home of the original 458 and owned by Tony Remora, true American. He designed an AR upper to be attached to your existing AR lower and blast 458 instead of 223 or 556. He designed this for our troops to stop truck bombs in the Middle East. Straight across the board, guys. A 458 is gonna stop a truck. It's gonna stop the Dogman. Tromex's link is in the description below, and please check out some of Tony's other amazing products. On to my links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. I also started a GoFundMe page a while back to help raise some money for urbex, cryptid hunting, and ghost hunting videos. So far, I have an SLS cam, an EVP recorder, and a couple trail cams. I'm hopefully getting closer to finishing a small video project that I have for you guys. I don't know. It's harder than I thought, like I said. And with that, enough of the jibber jabber. Let's get on with these Dogman encounters, shall we? Today's first Dogman encounter comes to us from a subscriber. I was about 25 years old at the time and living in San Diego County, where I still reside today. This would put the year at about 2003. The company I worked for at the time sent myself and a coworker, who was also a friend of mine, out to Palm Desert for a few days to do a job. We usually don't have to travel very far, but we had a high-end client out there. So the drive and the hotel fees, including any meals we had, were worth the trip. I had to tie up a few loose ends before I could get started, so my coworker, who we'll call Stan, drove out separately. The plan was for him to check into the hotel and I would meet up with him later in the early evening. I had only driven this route once before, so I printed out maps with directions to get there, as smartphones didn't exist yet, and of course I didn't have a GPS. After all was taken care of, I started on my way. Headed up the 15 freeway. I was supposed to take 79 South exit and then turn off onto another route to link up to 74, which headed straight to Palm Desert. But I missed the exit and stupidly kept going and took the 79 North instead. I realized my mistake when I came to a town called Hemet. The next transition was to the 74, so I decided to take it. It was a big backtrack. I basically was doing a sort of loop. This part of 74 headed up through San Bernardino Mountains to get back to where I originally should have been. I was mad at myself for making the mistake, but at least I got back on the right track. So I called up Stan and told him what I had done, and I was going to be a bit later than planned. He just laughed and said he'd pick up some beer and burgers for me when I arrived. After a short stretch of windy roads, the road straightened out a bit. It was sometime in spring, and there were still patches of snow on the ground here and there. As I climbed into elevation, the trees were getting a bit thicker. It was before dusk and still bright outside, but the sun had set below the tree line. I flipped on my lights just in case because it was a mountain road. Safety first, right? This is where things get interesting. I came around a slight bend and the road was fairly straight, one lane in each direction. There was no cars in front of me, but one car trailing me a bit back. Then I saw something come from the left of the road out to the middle of the road. It was about, my estimation, 150 yards down. It walked on all fours into the road. At first I thought it was a black bear. as they are known to be in these mountains. I kinda got excited as I'd never encountered any bears before, even while camping in bear country many times. As I got closer, I noticed it wasn't the color of a bear, and it had a tail. It looked more like a big wolf. As I got even closer, I could see it kinda was medium tannish brown fur with gray mixed in it. Kinda like a German shepherd, but with some gray evenly mixed in with the brown and tan. It had a long snout like a wolf or maybe a malamute, tail and ears just like a wolf. I quickly thought to myself, I didn't think there were any wolves in these mountains. Just your normal mountain critters. As I got about 50 yards from it, the part I will always remember, it stood up. It stood up and turned to look and see what was coming. By my estimation, it was tall, about 7 feet tall, I would guess. Way bigger than any dog I had ever seen. It just stared as I kept coming closer and closer, and then abruptly turned and ran quickly on 2 legs that looked just like dog legs, but it had long, more human-looking arms. It leaned forward as it took just 2 steps and leapt over the ditch on the right like a basketball player jumping from one leg to the other to dunk a basketball. Then it just disappeared into the brush and trees. My first thought was, holy shit, I just saw a werewolf. I'd never heard of the Dogman at the time, just what you see in the movies. The way it moved on 2 legs, though, and leapt over the ditch effortlessly. The thing was, it didn't look aggressive. Looks like it was thinking, oh crap, what's coming? It didn't have yellow or glowing eyes. It didn't chase the car. It didn't seem malignant. It just seemed like it wanted to have nothing to do with what was coming towards it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it at all either. I didn't tell Stan as I was afraid to get ridiculed. But I saw what I saw, and I still to this day wonder if the car far behind me had saw it as well. I don't think I saw a werewolf. I think I saw a Dogman. Today's second Dogman encounter. I'm going to state right away that my sighting has terrorized me to say the least. When I was a small child, I watched American Werewolf in London by myself and had been mortally afraid of werewolves since then. My sighting was the 20th of July, 2012. It was a Friday night. I was 19 at the time and didn't have many responsibilities other than delivering pizza part-time, so naturally, being a teenager, I was out with a friend at a house party in Old Caddy, a suburb west of Houston, Texas. My friends and I experimented with both marijuana and alcohol, but we were always responsible enough to make sure one of us stayed sober to be the designated driver. That particular night was my turn to be the sober one. My friend B had gotten well past drunk, and once he was starting to behave recklessly, I decided it was time to leave the party and take him home. He didn't want me to take him home, so instead he asked me to drive him to one of our other friends' house that I'm not really familiar with. This friend, who I'm only remembering as Joey, lived on the far west outskirts of Caddy, close to a town called Berkshire. I took Morton Road to get there with the driver and passenger window down so B could get some fresh air. The street on this one turned north of Morton, and while I don't remember the name of the street, I do remember how to get there. My sense of direction is fairly superior. I delivered pizzas all throughout Caddy and have since become a local truck driver in Houston. The road had 3 or 4 houses on the eastern side, and on the west side was a fairly large forested area, maybe 40 or so acres of dead ends just past the last house. I had noticed the moon was full before I even went out that night. I got to Joey's house, the second house on the right, and parked my car on the left side of the road, closest to the trees. I helped B get out of my car and walked him to the porch. Joey came out and thanked me for dropping him off, and we said our goodbyes. I decided to smoke a cigarette before I left the road. At that time, I shared my car with my dad, and his number 1 rule was no smoking in the car. After lighting my cigarette, it didn't take long to notice that the road was eerily silent. I assumed I didn't notice before as I was helping my noisy drunk friend get inside the house. Maybe 3 drags of my cigarette, I heard heavy footsteps going across the gravel maybe 100 feet in front of me. I was alarmed at the sound it made, similar to the sound of pulling something metal against concrete. As I've stated, my fears have always been of werewolves. Here I am alone, standing on a dark road under a full moon, and hearing something big walking way too close for comfort for me. I didn't hesitate to throw down my cigarette and get into the car. I told myself I was getting in that I didn't want to turn on my headlights so I wouldn't see what was in front of me, and simply reverse my way back onto Morton Road and get the hell out of there. Unfortunately for me, my car had automatic lights and turned on as soon as I started the car, a fact that I was aware of in my panic but seemed to ignore. Immediately in front of me, about 100 feet, as I had guessed, was a 6 to 6.5 to possibly 7 foot tall beast on 2 legs. It was covered in black fur with a body of a gym-addicted man and the head of what I would guess to be similar of a German shepherd or black wolf. It had human-like feet covered in dark fur as well, with large claws sticking out about 2 inches. And it held in its left hand out the same way a human would be reaching for something in front of him. I noticed that the fingers ended in long claws as well. Well, this was enough for me to cause my jaw to drop. What got me the most was that it was wearing a torn blue jeans that seemed to be too tight and unnaturally torn, and an open flannel blue shirt that was ripped at the bulky shoulders. It looked my way when the lights revealed it and glared at me with narrowed yellow eyes bearing its large fangs. My windows were still down and I hadn't touched my radio, so I had no trouble hearing the loud growl it let out. It then turned its head to the forest and dropped on all fours and ran out of sight. All this took place in about 20 seconds, but it felt like hours. At this point, I was literally in tears and didn't hesitate for 1 second longer to shove my car in reverse and put the gas pedal to the floor. I heard a loud growling and grunting as I was leaving. I reversed onto Morton Road and went 80 or 90 miles an hour down the streets heading back to Caddy, and didn't slow down till I was at Interstate 10. While still on Morton Road, I kept my eyes in front of me and sobbed the whole while because I had never been so scared in my life. I can swear that look I got from that creature was communicating to me that I had no business seeing him and he wanted me gone. The look reminded me of criminals on TV being caught in their wrongdoings and wanting to cause harm that just witnessed it. I got home, ran inside, and called my Scottish Terrier into my room and didn't sleep till the sun was up. To this day, I never had the desire nor the nerve to go back to that part of Morton Road. I obsessed over the idea that I had seen a werewolf and researched werewolf sightings on Google and had been intrigued by the Beast of Bray Road sightings and everything ever since. I was disappointed to see that nothing I found on the web was precisely what I had saw. While the beasts others have encountered seemed similar, not many were spotted wearing clothes. Today's third encounter. A man who went fishing for brook trout alone on the night of July 7, 2015, near Bancroft, Ontario, found much more than he bargained for as he returned to his cabin via gravel road. It was light enough out so he could see 50 feet ahead of him without having his truck headlights on, when he saw what he thought was a person standing in the middle of the road about 20 feet away. He slowed down and flicked on his roof lamps. It was a creature about 7 feet tall, black with grayish silver parts, hunched over with a dead rabbit in its hands. Yes, hands with fingers and claws as far as he could tell. Its feet seemed to be bent backwards. It turned its head and shoulders and looked right at him. He could see the yellow eye shine. He also heard growling, and it was in a low, low tone that made his hair on the back of his neck stand up. and at that point he stomped on the gas in panic, half embracing for the impact and closing his eyes for a brief second. The creature either jumped to the ditch or laid down to let the truck, which rides 22 inches off the ground, roll over it. The man saw nothing in the rearview mirror, however, and just kept going. He compared to the creature of those that were seen in the movie The Dog Soldiers, but his encounter was not over. He made it safely back to his cabin and sat down trying to calm himself down when he heard something large walking around outside of his cabin. He thought there may have been 2 of them, but wasn't sure. He had his cell phone with him, but there was, of course, no coverage. After spending a long, anxious night, near dawn, he finally thought of turning his vehicle alarm on from the inside of his cabin in hopes that it might scare the creature away. As the alarm beeped, he made a mad dash for the truck, jumped in, and drove home. A 4-hour trip plus. He says he still has bad dreams about it. Wow, guys. You know, when my subscriber contacted me, he said, Jeff, this is not an encounter that is, gonna blow you away. Well, you know what? It did blow me away because you're driving and all of a sudden there's this creature standing in front of you and it jumps out of the way and disappears. Any encounter is going to blow me away because it's something we normally don't see. And it just makes your brain go, what did I just see? So I want to thank you for sharing that encounter with me. The 2 other encounters were, God, amazing. This poor guy is dropping his buddy off, doing the responsible thing, and sees a werewolf dogman creature. There has been a couple of sightings with these creatures in close. I believe one is in Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, around the railroad tracks. Now, the last encounter, that's crazy in enough. This thing must have been stalking him as he was fishing, or with its other counterpart as he thought there was another one. Who knows, maybe it was just the one and it followed him back to the cabin. But he did do the smart thing. Loud noise, scared it off, and drove home. Thankfully enough, he was safe too. Anyway, I've got a couple other encounters that I'm working on and a whole bunch of subscriber encounters with cryptids that I'm going to be sharing with you this week as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and with that, I bid you farewell.